How you doing, people? 4th of July. Happy 4th of July.
America.
We got a lot to celebrate. We're still free. That freedom was won. That was earned. Don't take that lightly. 4th of July isn't about just fireworks. It's not. But it is about barbecue, and I hope you're doing it.
It's like cake and ice cream for America's birthday.
Guys, we're barbecuing ribs. We're barbecuing ribs for a special person. Barb's daughter, Missy. She has bone cancer. Has never had pork ribs. Well, I happen to know my way around the grill with these pork ribs, I'm thinking. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. It really is. We truly believe in the heart of this holiday. The good folks in the past, this made this possible for us. In fact, today, actually, what it is, it's going to be just about shooting a bull.
Look at this.
Yeah. Hey.
West Virginia waterfall.
Is that what that is? Okay. Okay. A mullet?
Mullet.
I got an eagle with a bullet. I don't think that actually. Oh man, not our eagles. You don't mess with the eagle, do you?
Slow
Yeah,
down.
it's. I'm in a great mood. I'll tell you what. I woke up early this morning for the first time in 4 months. I did. I've been dragging butt like you don't know. But things are good. Things are good. I'm pretty stoked to be here. I'm glad you're here. We have a lot of new subscribers. I don't know how. We haven't been making many videos. Actually, all winter it's been kind of slow. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. When I'm working, I've had a lot of time to think about what I'm going to do better with this channel, and we're going to get a nice fresh restart here shortly. So just bear with us, guys and girls. Okay, anyways, what I'd like to do is now we're going to be talking about stories of people in our family in the past and one particular family friend. And it is going to be while in a combat role or in training or whatever. But there is no stories going to be told today or ever on YouTube by me that has the reality of combat in it. I will not do that. This is going to be very children safe. It's just some of the things that happen. It. That's the light of it. Those of you that's been in, let's just call it deployments. You know what the stories are. I could talk personally with you, but we don't need. Let's protect our families. Let's just put it that way. It just plain makes it a whole lot better. I'd like to start out with one. My grandpa Wright, he had a twin brother, Leon. His name was Leo, so he had Leo and Leon, and they really during World War One they were young, and they tried to get in when the U.S. got into World War One, and they wouldn't let them. Say, well, you gotta. It wasn't about being this high. It was like you just ain't dang old enough. That's just the way it was. Well, they got really, really disappointed, and well, they finally got to be 17 years old. Well, by that time, you got what they call a primary school education. You went through the 8th grade, and that was it. And so they took jobs, and a lot of times they worked together. Well, they joined the Merchant Marines toward the end of the World War One. By the time they even got over there, the war was over. But they were on these ships. You got to remember, there's German submarines around. I don't know what they. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking, but I remember him telling that when they finally could get where they could join the army, all they got to do was pretty much do guard duty and battlefield cleanup and
sweep and mop.
Yeah. So they didn't get. They were looking at war as a romantic notion, an adventure, and I think that was the best thing that happened to them. I never knew my uncle Liam, but I obviously my grandfather Leo I knew very well, and I think probably his personality that would have changed him greatly. But he said that kind of sucked. But we can move on. I had I've actually got one celebrity in that was in the military in World War II. Um, his name is Roy Dickinson. He's my uncle Roy Dickinson. He was in Merrill's Marauders, which is the 2nd and 75th Rangers. Now they train hard. Well, because of his German background, he was born in the States, but his parents were from Germany. They wouldn't put him in the European theater, so he went to Burma. Well, those of you that know the stories of Merle's Marauders, they didn't have an easy time of it. They didn't expect him to. They didn't expect him to come back. They had a mission to do, and it was very difficult. 99% of his stories I can't tell, and it's just the way it is. Now he was quite a dashing man, you know. He was a big guy, and he's very strong. I really liked him a lot. I thought the world of him, especially when I'd been in the military and came out. I understood what he was trying to tell me about some things. But I'll tell you one little story from him that was very interesting to me. You got to remember the time frame and how people felt about Japanese for this to make sense. One time they fought like crazy. They had a hard time, very hard time. The things that weren't in the history books about Merrill's Marauders, my Uncle Roy told me after they'd been there a couple weeks, everybody cut the crotches out of their pants. They had dysentery so bad that all of them did, and there was a lot of sick people, including him. And that's what they dealt with: bugs, snakes, everything. Well, the area in Burma they were at, there had been timber cut before all that started. And he came through. Now, you've got to remember, these are fighting men. And he came through holding his M1, and he seen a Japanese soldier sitting on a stump. True story. So he pulls up his rifle. No, he didn't do that. He pulled his rifle up. He says, "You dumb SOB," he says, "I could shoot you right now and you'd never know it." The Japanese turned around and he spoke in perfect English to him. He says, "I may be a dumb SOB, but I have attended 2 of your universities." He says, "I was born in the U.S. He says, "I was visiting family in Japan when the war started, and he was a conscription soldier. Yeah, he got drafted. Didn't want no part of it. Didn't want to be there. He got away from his unit. This is his way of being able to get back home. Of course, he did make it back home, but he was in an internment camp, and you think about that. Humanity can be so cruel to each other, but just think about going to visit family in a country that your parents were from, and first meeting actually, and being drafted right in a darned army, and just that's that. And that, yeah, well, that story right there hit home for me about what people around the world can really do, including Americans. That's why you need to be nice to each other. We need to get out of these darn political situations we're in that don't even count. None of the crap I see even counts to me. It's all just frickin' fluff. My son Colin, he was deployed in Afghanistan. He's in the Marines. Worked on jets. Want to share anything about what the whole deal was like for you?
Bagram is kind of northeast part of Afghanistan, kind of in a big bowl of mountains all the way around us. So anywhere you looked, all you seen was mountains. Used to be a Russian base, and the Afghanis took it over. I think in the 80s or 90s, and then we took it back from them. So you walk around, you see these old buildings and bolt holes and rocket marks all over in them, and you're going, I wonder what's going on there. Well, day two, we found out what's going on there. I'll tell you that. It's, walking around at night, got my issued jammies on, looking pretty good. Got my flip flops, rifle. Just going to the bathroom. But you got to carry your rifle around everywhere, for obvious reasons. So I'm using the bathroom, doing my thing, and all of a sudden this big voice comes on and it says, indirect fire done, flak jackets, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, uh-oh. So
While you're on the pooper.
Yeah, I had to finish what I was doing and go get the flak jacket on. I got a picture of me here somewhere, standing with a big head bucket on, and then my jammies, Marine Corps issue pajamas, and my rifle at like 2 a.m. with my flip flops on. That's what you had to do some days, though. And always just about time you went to sleep. Here it comes, it's coming in. And Christmas.
Mortars.
Yeah, Christmas time comes around, and they obviously didn't like us during Christmas, especially, So we knew we were going to be in the bunkers all night. So we all just sat around waiting. Sure enough, here it comes, So we're already ready, fully dressed, and go right out to the bunkers and, post security and everything else. And we just started singing Christmas songs. You know what I mean? It's a big, we don't care. Go ahead and mortar us. We're going to sing. So we sang Christmas songs at the top of our lungs, and that was a pretty fun time while mortars are coming down. They never hit anything, though, with those. They had a security grid around the base, so anytime anything comes up in the air, they can tell already that it's in there. And they got Cobras just sitting there waiting to take off. So they're within seconds, there's Cobras coming up. So they got pretty smart. Afghanis and Iraqis are very, very smart people. Trust me. There's nothing dumb about them people. What they used to do is there's little villages all over in the mountains, all over the place, And we're sitting in the middle of all this, and they're surrounded just watching us 24/7, basically. And so what they'll do is they'll get a mortar tube, set it, and kind of aim it where they think. There's no math there, nothing, Get a piece of like dry ice or ice, stick it down in that tube just high enough to where once that melts, the mortar will slide down in and it'll go off. But that's why they never hit anything either, because by the time that thing went off, it just went wherever it felt like, basically. So they get that. You get up a couple times in the morning, you'll hear a little something snap by your head, and you go, what the heck, is that, a bee or something? That's them taking pot shots from the mountains. They never hit anything, so. Yeah, it's a pretty big base. They had like a Starbucks kind of little area and shopping little area, places like that, And it was Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, JSOC, everybody was there. Everybody had their aircraft there. A-10s, F-18s, Cobras, everything. We were there. And, when you're working on a flight line, it's just big, giant, open flight line. There's nowhere to go, basically. So when they start dropping stuff on you, got to jump off the jet and run across the flight line. And, hopefully you get where you need to be. But, yeah, we all did great out there. We did 12 on, 12 off, no weekends, no, whatever. Just get out there and get it done.
It wasn't always enjoyable being in places like that. But you got the chance to do some gaming, didn't you?
Yeah, I bought a little TV when I was in Italy. And it was like 120 euros or something. We went to Italy before we went to Afghanistan to support operations in Darfur. And we're stationed in Aviano in Italy. So they kept giving us these coins for everything. They're euros. Well, when you get a couple of guys going in the pub, they're just throwing coins all over. And the guy's like, that's like $50, right? And our guy's like, oh, it's just coins. I didn't know. Anyway, I ended up buying a little TV, and I put it in my backpack. I took it with me. So whatever time we did get off, I got to at least watch movies and, have some fun there. Anyway, to just get a little sense of home.
he sent me a lot of pictures when he's over there. Maybe at some point we'll dig them out. But I thank all of you that served and made this Independence Day special. Don't forget our freedoms. Just don't. Now, some stories that my dad had told me. Now, my father was in the Korean War. Okay? And now, I'm going to tell you something brutal. My Uncle Eldon lived, well, they had family farm and milked a lot of Holsteins. They had grown a few beefs, a lot of pigs. And my Uncle Eldon never went to school a day in his life. He couldn't read or write. And no, sir, he could not. But he did eventually learn how to sign his name, but that was it. It looked like a 4-year-old did it. But the man was smart, and he was very good with a farm. My grandpa Drake knew that. Well, he got word that Eldon, being older than Dad, was going to be drafted during the Korean War. So my grandfather says, "No, I got to have him." He went down to the draft board, told them, "Look, I need Eldon. He's my oldest son. I need him on the farm. If you want to draft somebody, draft next in line." Harvey Sr. I wasn't even thought of back then. And that was my dad. Well, Dad got wind of that through Grandma, and he talked to Grandpa about it, and Grandpa told him the cold hard facts. He says, "I cannot live with the size farm we're running without Eldon, and you know that." So Dad says, "Well, I'm not going to go in the Army." So he went down, took the test, signed up for the Air Force, ended up being a mechanic. And he did engines, power plants, and airframe. He had the ability to rebuild airplanes, and he did. And he had a lot of stories. It would take me 3 hours to tell stories of things that happened on the flight line alone. And he was stationed in Japan. I'm not going to tell you the air base because of part of the story. I don't know if it's still sensitive or not. But at any rate, he gets deployed to Japan after all of his schools. That's quite a few schools for that. I can't imagine even then what it was like. So he ended up working on the B-29 Superfortress. That's what he did. He had great love for the aircraft, great love for it. The technology at the time in that aircraft, it was a big bomber, was amazing. And he said just working on the engines on them to maintain them, the high level that they had to do. It's like one thing in particular. They had dual magneto distributors. Each cylinder had 2 spark plugs. What were they? They were the 3120s, I think the engines were. But they're monstrous. The engines them are just huge, and they needed all the horsepower it could get. And yeah, they were supercharged. So to set just to time the engine with dual magnetos, so it run properly, was just amazing. But that was backup in case one ignition side failed or one spark plug failed. They would continue to run. They flew them a long, long ways. So he worked on them. Now, he also did maintenance and fueling the F-86 Saberjet. And he said that was one heck of an airplane at the time. I know whenever we went to air shows back when I was young and he seen one, I knew where he was. Yeah, he's in that time machine. We never seen a Superfortress, a B-29, because none were flying or even in good condition at the time. So I had pictures and stuff that my father took of them. And he actually, there was one scenario there that I found really interesting. I loved these stories as a kid. I really did. He fueled an F-86. And the area that it was in, they told him that he had to taxi it to a whole other area along with 11 other aircraft. So he fueled them at the fuel depot, which, that's, you keep in a combat zone at that time, the fuel was not near operational buildings. And, but it's normal for mechanics to be inside the jets, isn't it? Even now.
Yeah, they'll get in, start them up. Sometimes they'll taxi him.
Yeah.
If you're doing, he's a what they call a plane captain. He's in charge of the entire aircraft. He signs off on everything, even other people's jobs. He has to inspect those and sign them off. He taxis it up and down runway, fuels it, and hands it over to the officer, and then they inspect it. That's
what Dad did. He had quite a nice job there, but there was one day I remember him. He's talking about pulling the B-29s with a tug. Now, what these really are is kind of a really overweight tractor. Good description?
Yeah.
And they have a tow bar that hooks to the front wheel of the aircraft, and they pull them. Now, he told me them are quite powerful tugs. And he says, but you kind of really got to lean on it with the tug, and just pretty soon it starts going. And he said, you have to be real careful. Of course, they got ground guides guiding us all the time. It's less than a walk speed when you're around other aircraft with a tug. And he was talking about driving that tug, what that was like. He said it was kind of a nerve-wracking experience the first few times you did it. After a while, you get old hat. You just know what to do. And he told me that it took him 200 feet. If the aircraft was going 2 miles an hour, it took 200 feet to stop the B-29 with that tug. Well, that's nuts, isn't it? Boy, technology sure came a long way since, hasn't it? Yeah, it sure has. It was just amazing, some of the stories. Now, in this air base, they had a lot of Japanese that worked there. And he got a house off base. At some point, you're allowed to do that. And I'm going to take just a second to think and remember exactly everything he told me about that. So, as what was proper at the time in a combat zone, which Japan was, it was fairly safe, the war was in Korea. And what happened is there was this whole big commotion, a big explosion. And he says it was at the far end of the runway. The way the runway is it just kind of went right off to the sea. And that's how they took off. It was, but the explosion came from beneath the runway in the rocks. And I don't know if somebody was suspicious of what was there or whatever, but Dad told me, he says, the alert went up, and he says everybody was told to stay right where they were. Do not move. You're not getting on base. You're not getting off base. You're confined to your work area. This whole 9 yards, and all that lasted all day. And everybody was really curious because they heard quite a little bit of rumbling and one thing and another. What they had found was, this was an old Japanese World War II base to begin with. This is quite honestly what it was. And they found an underground runway. Yes, because the Japanese were pretty smart. They knew at some point, with everything going the way it was, that they were going to get bombed. And air bases were a real hot target. So they had actually created this underground runway. They could fly into this cliff under the other runway. And it was reinforced concrete and all this. So inside this was all kinds of Japanese planes, weapons, bombs. This was a whole nother air base. He says it was just unbelievable. Now, Dad never actually seen it himself, but some of the intel guys was talking to him. He told them what they found in there. And it was just amazing that something like that could actually be done. Now, can you imagine how big that entrance had to be for aircraft to actually fly in there?
you imagine landing back underground in an airplane right in the middle of a cliff? No way.
Okay.
I think that was probably one time use only type.
No,
of deal.
no, they flew out of it all the time. It was an operational
Out
base.
of it. I'm talking into it.
No, they flew into it.
Yeah, that's pretty ballsy.
Big entrance. But I want you to think about that. There's some aircraft, probably bombers, could not fly into it. Maybe they had an elevator or something. But I know he said that they definitely knew that the fighters had been flying into it. Now you think about aerodynamics. Now, when you are flying close to the ground at any real speed, you got a ground effect. Like if you're flared and you are too fast, your aircraft does not want to actually come in contact with the ground very easily, which you're probably quite familiar with that.
Yeah. Pressure wave underneath.
It is the pressure wave underneath, and it rolls like this. Now, can imagine being contained into this
There's
area.
no touch and go.
Yeah, there's no touch and go. You screw this up, you ain't going around.
Yeah.
You just go to the back. I wonder if they had a toilet flush for crashed airplanes or something.
Yeah, big trash compactor back there. They just
they must have had something, didn't they?
A net.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Dad had a good friend, Dale St. Peter, and they got a house together, and they hired one of the locals. A lad, probably, I think he was around 16 years old or 17, as a houseboy. Now, they wanted, these Japanese wanted that, jobs like that. That was money. Well, what they did was they took care of their laundry, their uniforms, and they took care of the house because they would work long hours or long days. And between Dale St. Peter and my dad, they paid this guy very, very well. Well, something that was quite interesting is Dad learned jiu-jitsu from his houseboy. And that's pretty impressive, actually. When you learn it directly from a Japanese, something like that, there's a whole lot more to it than you would get in the civilian world here, even today. Obviously, a lot have been lost. But he got to know his houseboy's parents. And he was talking to him. And Japanese was looking at this, the World War II for them. Dad asked him, he said, don't you feel bad about us being here, like invading? No. He says, you bring money. We like your money. We treat you as individuals. Everybody's got a chance. He says, well, I was just thinking of World War II. He says, why? He says, we accomplished our goals. We won World War II. And this is coming from a man that actually fought in the Japanese military in World War II. He said, no, we accomplished all our goals. He says, we had a major problem going into World War II. He says, what it was, our population had increased to the point we were not self-sustaining. We had to take over more area, more resources, or deplete our population. So we won. Not that gave them the restart. At some point, the Japanese had adopted a 2 children per family rule, kind of, is what I was understanding. You can probably look that up and see what more to it there was. But to think about that, to actually think about that, it was just amazing. Now, another thing that happened, that we had captured several Russian MiGs fairly early in the Korean War. But some of them stories never got told. Well, Dad was out on a flight line servicing aircraft, and he says this plane come in from the wrong way, super low, and landed. Well, when he taxied up to where my father was. I believe he was fueling aircraft. But Dad seen the Russian markings on this. It was a MiG. No alert, no alarm was sounded, no chase, no nothing. Just like it was normal. Well, Dad didn't know what to do. And So he jumped in the Jeep and he flew right over to the aircraft, and the guy spoke to him in real broken English. He had a hard time understanding him. And uh, the best dad could figure, he's trying to give him the dang old aircraft. Well,
He's throwing the keys.
yeah, here's the keys,
There you go.
Well, they had wanted, in a bad way, to get one of these MiGs. They were trying to steal one. They hadn't yet. Actually, that they did, at a later date, did steal a few of them. But this guy gave his up freely, and a brand new model. It was a brand new aircraft. And so Dad throws him in a Jeep, and he had a sidearm. And at the time, they had the Flightline people carried a 38 pistol. That's what they had for sidearm. And he wasn't real concerned about this guy in the first place. But Dad kind of figured, after what his houseboy taught him, that if this Russian started acting up in any kind of way, he was definitely one way or another going to be able to handle the situation. But the Russian was just really glad to be there. I'm sure his life really changed. So he goes in, and I don't know what the Air Force Command Center would be, but it was flight operations, I believe is what he said.
Yeah, ready room.
And he walked this guy right in, and here's all your higher ranking officers, a few NCOs. Oh my God, they seen that Russian uniform. They flipped out, had the MPs come running, and it didn't take very long for his dad to tell the story. Hey, you got a MiG sitting down there. The guy just gave us the keys, and it's fully combat operationally. Well, we didn't even see him land. No, nothing on the radar. Yeah, this guy, he was slick. He knew what he was doing, didn't he? So anyway, Dad gets a pretty good reprimand over that, believe it or not. A very, let's just call it a stern scolding. All of you who've been in the military know what position he just put himself into without thinking. Yeah, don't do that, Get on the radio. I asked Dad after I got out of the military, I said, Dad, when that all happened, why didn't you get on the radio? He says, them radios back then, he says, they didn't work very good. He says, he says, my radio was not working. He said, I didn't know what to do. I wasn't going to leave him there. He said, I couldn't secure the aircraft. He says, I just did what I thought was the right thing to do. He said, they didn't like it very much, but they were glad to get the airplane. Well, I'm sure that there's some of you out there's got the same kind of stories like that. But these stories are about preserving our freedom that was already earned, okay? For whatever reason, this is what we have to do. Never forget the full fact of what the Fourth means for us. And that's the hard-earned freedom. But it is what it is. I hate that saying, don't you? But it fits. Those of you that want to join the military, or if you've got sons and daughters that want to join the military, everybody, you want to ask people when you're young, hey, I want to go in the military, what branch should I go into? What's it like? Blah, blah, blah. Nobody's going to tell you, oh, don't do that. That sucks. They're not going to tell you that. They're going to say, man, what'd I tell you? Do you remember when you asked me in high school? I said, I told Colin, I says, you got that choice on your own. I cannot give you advice. You just need to know what you're getting into. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to tell you what it is. You'll learn a lot. You'll learn how to be a man and a woman. You will. I don't care what sex you are. You're going to learn. And you are going to be pushed to your limit so hard that you finally realize that's where it actually all starts. Okay? You're going to go beyond limits you ever thought was possible. Way beyond. And I'll tell you another thing is, it sucks 90% of the time. It really sucks. What comes after that? Embrace the suck, isn't it? But you know something? You get to be friends with people from all over the country, and in some cases from other parts of the world. And it's a strong cross-section of many, many different ways of life. And it's really interesting. It really is that 10%. But the 90%, it really does suck.
It involves a lot of cleaning.
I'm
Too
sorry.
much mopping.
Yeah, Jesus. I've seen people get in just a little bit of trouble. Might have got a DWI or something, and they got busted for it. Well, they get what they call extra duty. Well, I've seen them. They had these rows of cannonballs, great big old 12-inch cannonballs along the sidewalk, and I seen them painting them cannonballs in a hot Georgia sun. And turn right around the next day, they would paint them one red, one white, one red, one white. And now their officer they'd be halfway done, and this is the truth. One officer would look and he said, whoa. You're supposed to start with a red cannonball, not a white one. Start over. Yeah, things like that. Pushing rocks uphill with your nose. You think I'm kidding, don't you?
When you go out on the flight line, you're not allowed to smoke or nothing out there. Obviously, you can't have anything that's flaming. So a lot of guys get where they're dipping tobacco, Well, all over the flight lines, there's these little pockets that got a little hook in them. So you can tie things down in the aircraft, chains and stuff. They're right in a row. On every row, they're called pad eyes. Well, everybody, when they're done, they just throw it in the pad eye and off you go. So when you're a new guy and you screw up, they give you a little plastic spoon. I want every single one of these pad eyes cleaned. So they got there with a little spoon, digging out the pad eyes and all this nasty stuff they're finding in there. So, yeah, that's pretty bad.
Marines suck. In the motor pool in the Army, I had seen an amazing thing. You get a new guy to the unit, you break him in good. I'll tell you they do. Well, when vehicles are running around the motor pool or around personnel, they're being moved and parked, they always got ground guides, generally one at each end. What a ground guide is, he's a guy sitting there doing the signals and telling when to turn and when to stop and where to park and the whole 9 yards. So they're very important. But I remember when a young Private Seaton came into the unit, and he got sent to the motor pool to do a little work. So when the first thing that happened, Motor Sergeant says, well, he says, you're going to do this and that, and that's the way it's going to be, one thing and the other, and you work with PFC so-and-so. So he did that. Pretty soon PFC so-and-so, there's a reason I'm not mentioning the name. He says, you got to go back in, talk to Motor Sergeant, and he says, go to Motor Supply. He said, get a requisition for him. He says, what we need is a couple boxes of ground guides. So he gets to the Motor Sergeant. He says, Sergeant, now this guy's right out training, so he's still real green, nice shiny uniform, just shiny, And those of us that have been there around for a while, you got kind of beat on, But this is where it starts. Motor Sergeant, need a box of ground guides. What? Yeah, no problem. He says, I'll send you for him. So he got a request for him for a box of ground guides. So he goes over to Motor Supply, hands that piece of paper through the cage. He says, what the crap? Oh, yeah. No, we're out. We're all out. He says, but I'll tell you what, go over to Delta Company Motor Pool. They just got some in. He says, do that. And he says, you tell them I sent you and they call me if they got any kind of problem. So he goes to Delta. Need a box of ground guides. Oh, yeah. We just got called by you. No, he says, you got to go over to freaking Charlie Company. He says, clear across the way. He says, that's where, it was tanks there. And so he walks in there, and the phone was ringing way beforehand. This guy's got mileage on his brand new shoes, don't he? Yeah, in the Georgia hot sun. Gonna have to go to Division for that. You know where the Division motor pool is? I've been here 2 days. Oh, you don't know where the mess hall is even, do you? Not really. He said, we got a mess hall? Yeah, no kidding. We actually, on Fort Stewart, had darn good food. People say Army food sucks. When you're in rapid deployment, it don't. It does not. It was wonderful. So, anyways, he goes division. You know where this all went, don't you? He was all day. And he came back with this box. And what I seen it, what it like to me is somebody just put a little bolt with a washer with a piece of wire on it through a frickin' one of them brass rings that come out of your poncho, put it into a box, hand wrote ground guides. So he goes just before the end of day formation back to PFC so-and-so and hands him this box. And I did happen to be there when this happened. The most shocked look on this PFC you ever seen. What? He looked, handwritten, he goes, he opens that box lid and he pulls this thing out. And he just starts laughing. PFC seating, or a private seating at the time. I'm so sorry. He says, this is all I could get. I've been everywhere to every motor pool. I even been to division. He says, that's all I could get. And he says, I had to beg and plead just to get this. He says, can we make do? Yep. He says, private, tomorrow morning, I'm going to teach you all about ground guides. Mm-hmm. And he spent the next day in the hot sun parking vehicles. And he learned. I'm sure he passed all the information on very well. I'd love to hear some of your stories, the light stories, things that happen.
Yes, a couple of those.
Leave them in the comments. It'd be great reading. Very interesting. Okay, have a happy 4th, guys.
See you later.
You take care, people.